Human and Environment presentation by Nurul Iza from Design Psychology class of Queensland University of Technology. This presentation was done to observe person-environment interaction, or we call it human behavior. The focus of interaction will be on the physical environment and its constituent elements such as location, spatial quality, architectonics, ambient conditions, furniture, fittings, finishes, furnishings, and equipment. The purpose of this observation is to see how the environment influences behavior and vice versa. The observation taken in some space in second floor of P Block QT Gardens Point, the space situated adjoined with two classes. The timeline of the observation are 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 4 p.m. on workday, and 4 p.m. on weekend. Each observation were about 2 hours. Method consideration in my observation are based on Tony Cassidy and Robert Gifford method about seeing response to different environments, specifically from Robert Gifford that said we always selecting for our attention in a relative small, manageable portion of the available information, which later I used it to manage the information by zoning the area. Then I observed the bigger side of the space first. The space surrounded by big windows from floor to ceiling, but it also shaded by floor above. So from the observation, what happened is on sunny winter day at 10 a.m., the floor is full by daylight, but the rest of the observation, like 2 a.m. or 7 a.m., daylight doesn't detect it to be part of the human activity because it simply didn't go through into the space. So what happened when there are no daylight directly take parts of the quality in the space? What is the main part of lighting in this space? They mainly use electricity or artificial light to sustain the need of light in the space, but here comes the interesting part. The space located semi-privately connected to classes, and the light in the space mainly taken parts by these two classes. Based on the 6th observation, 2 scenarios were found. One is when the light inside the class turned off, and second is when it is on. Of course, it is dependent on what classes are going on to decide whether the light's on or off in the class, but it is mainly these two scenarios. Based on data from the observation, on 7 a.m. observation, there's activity inside the class, but the light is off. Artificial light from outside reflected from the glass window, and also the daylight comes from the out. And on 10 a.m., the artificial light is on and enhancing the quality of the space outside the class in terms of lighting. We could compare it into the 7 a.m. observation. It looks more shaded rather than the 10 a.m. observation that is look brighter. So the conclusion from this lighting analysis is that artificial light from classes took more role to enlightening the space outside the class. That makes me remember of a theory in environmental psychology by Tony Cassidy on chapter 4 of experiment by Kohler and Linston on 1992, where they found that access to direct daylight and daylight fluorescent lighting had a positive effect on stress hormones compared to the other conditions. And this space applied that rule, using warm tone artificial light and having window to allow direct daylight, which created different characteristic of ambient in each corners of the room. So because of that, I characterized the spaces into another 4: A, B, C, and D. Characteristic of each zone will be A, direct daylight and artificial light; B, medium daylight and minimum artificial light; C, minimum daylight and direct artificial light; and D, no daylight and direct artificial light. Specifically talking about A zone, it is filled with individuals. Traces that could be seen clearly is about gap, and refer back to Tony Cassidy theory in environmental psychology, behavior and experience in context, chapter 6, about proximity in personal space. In this zone, people tend to tolerate their personal space being invaded. And also there are individuals who expand his personal space through put his foot on sofa in front of him. On zone B, the zone is in between pin-up board and a circulation area. While I'm observing there are unplanned interesting thing going on. So someone that is using the circulation area, one person that is sit in this zone. And that for me is like a warn that is this space have something wrong. In zone Z, there are more group density than individual density. So there's an interesting encounter. So there's someone suddenly sit in front of a group of people. Then everybody in the group turn their head to the person. Then when the person opened his laptop, then everybody got into their business. So they was kind of like invaded. The personal space of the group is invaded by the person. And the sofa dimension in zone C supposed to fit for 2 people, but then during the observation, people tend to sit one sofa per one person by putting their back in the sofa, like expanding their personal spaces and make the sofa just for them. On zone D, usually crowded before classes, but when the class started, individual density started to rise. This zone also have circle table, different from the other zone. While it is packed with group, they usually sit just like how the trace left behind in the picture. But for individuals, they share more far to each other. So the conclusion to the circulation and density are the density hierarchy will be BCAD, with the B the highest density of individual density and D the group density. Based on the circulation and density findings, there are 1 part in zone B that are unused. So the conclusion to the circulation and density are the density hierarchy will be BCAD, with the B the highest density of individual density and D the group density. Based on the circulation and density findings, there are 1 part in zone B that are unused. So the conclusion is ambient and climate is affect how people move and interact, proven by the differences of density in the observation. Another factor such as how comfortable the sofa, like in zone C, is also took part, and in short, it is proven that environment influences human behavior, and human behavior also influences the environment, which is having like some traces left behind.